tickled button, I don't think.
No,
so
we don't. Yeah.
We have Jill Rigby joining us now, and she is the author of the book Raising Respectful Children in a Disrespectful World. Jill, welcome to today's Issues.
Good morning, Tim and Jim. So glad to be with you.
Now, you are you take care of character education and parenting expert, and you are the founder of based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Manners of the Heart. Tell us a little. That's pretty neat. Tell us about Manners of the Heart, and then we'll get to your book.
Oh, would love to. One of my favorite topics. Manners of the Heart is a nonprofit that I founded almost 12 years ago. And our real mission from God is that we are trying to bring a return of respect and civility back to our society, a very small mission back to our society. And we do that by equipping schools, encouraging families, and engaging communities. We have elementary school curriculum for K through 5th grade that teaches character and respect and teaches children really how to grow up to become respectful and responsible and respectable and respectful adults. And then we also work with parents through our parenting books that we're talking about today, and seminars and training and workshops, and we do teacher in-service training, and we also do the business of manners, which is marketplace and corporate training. So we're trying to kind of attack society in a very sweet, gentle way from all sides to try to bring us back to a more respectful time, and when we're respectful of each other and ourselves, and bring us back to a civil society.
What do you do? Now, I heard in there, I think that you say you do corporate classes for manners. What do you do when you go in a business, and how do you approach that?
Yes, we do. It's called the Business of Manners, and it's for small companies to mom and pops to large corporations. And we work on several different topics. We work on the business of communication, the business of manners, the business of dress, which is a real hot topic today in the business world. And also then, of course, the business of dining. We do a tutorial meal as well. But what we're really working on is those biblical concepts of serving rather than selling, and of trying to teach companies how to focus on a top line, we call it, rather than the bottom line. Because the bottom line takes care of itself when you're focused on top line, which is really taking care of the customer and not worrying so much about the money side, but worrying more about if you're doing your job with excellence and you're presenting an excellent product in a way that serves the community.
Jill, have your book, by the way, is called Raising Respectful Children in a Disrespectful World. I guess maybe every generation looks back and they go, back in the day, we didn't get away with what kids get away with today.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, always necessarily when you say something like that. But I'll say it. It seems like, without question, times have changed, let's say in the last 30, 40 years, in terms of the lack of manners, morals, values, those kinds of things have changed among young people today. Maybe that's why you're doing. That was one of the reasons you wrote this book and talking about this on the radio. Am I living in nostalgia here, or can that be backed up with maybe some scientific data or something you have available to you?
Your comments can absolutely be backed up with lots of scientific data. If we look at the statistics today of where our young adults find themselves, the 25 to 30-year-olds are back at home. That's one of the epidemics of our society today, that they're not capable of standing on their own 2 feet. And it's not just the economy. It's not just an economic issue. It's much deeper than that. Those young adults today were raised in an era of self-esteem. And in the late 60s, early 70s, we were told that self-esteem was going to be the cure-all for all the ills of our society. And the truth of the matter is that not only was it not the cure, it actually is the culprit. And what has happened to us is that that we have walked away from a corporate mindset where we made decisions based on what's good for the whole, not just what's good for me. Because of this emphasis on self-esteem, if you flip the term backwards, you easily hear the best definition of it, esteeming self. There's nowhere in Scripture that we were ever told to esteem ourselves. We're told to esteem God. We're told to esteem others. We're told to humble ourselves. We're told to not think more highly of ourselves than we ought, and to put God first and others, and God will take care of us. And we've totally done that our way and flipped that upside down and backwards. So in some ways, it shouldn't be a surprise where those horrible statistics, where we find those statistics today of the high rate of suicide, the high rate of drug use, that young adult population, again, that's been raised in all of this thinking, has the highest use of prescription drug use. And I'm not talking about necessarily abuse. I'm talking about because they're not coping, and they're on, they're taking the Adderall and all of those drugs, and then they're also taking antidepressants at a higher rate than ever. So if you really, there's plenty of scientific data to back up that the young people of today are in a much tougher place than they have ever been in.
Now, did I hear you right that the promotion, and I remember this, of, self-esteem, in quotes, back from the late 60s, early 70s, when that whole push started, that kids need more self-esteem, that you're saying that actually was counterproductive?
I'll just come out and say it was wrong.
Because why?
Really,
because why? I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm not trying to argue with you.
No.
I
can argue.
but I want to know why. That just sounds so counterintuitive.
I'll tell you why. If you go back to the garden, if you go all the way back to the garden, it was sin of pride, right? And we all and everyone recognized what a horrible thing that this is definitely wrong. That it's a terrible thing, and we know what it has led to. Wanting to be God, wanting to, have it all and all of that, all about me, fell for it. Well, fast forward to the 1500s. In 1500s, there was a term called vainglory, and it's used in Scripture as well, that saying that it is not a good thing. Vainglory, glory of self, vanity. We still understood very clearly this is a terrible thing. Well, fast forward to the 1960s, actually 1890 is when the word self-esteem was coined. It stayed within the psychiatric circles until about the 40s, began to bubble out. Then it came to all the rest of us, like I said, in the 60s. And but the problem is, it's the same thing. It's all one and the same. It's all a sin of pride. When I first started on this path many years ago, I thought we took a good thing, self-esteem, and took it too far, which we're so prone to do, until I finally, after many years of study and deep work in this area, and others are now joining me. Some of the psychiatrists and psychologists are now joining me, saying, you know what? Oops, we made a grand mistake here, telling us that this is what we needed, because it's actually the converse is true. We don't need self-esteem at all. We come into the world esteeming ourselves, and we've got to break that selfishness, our innate selfishness we come into the world with, before our heart can open to receive Christ, to serve Him, to serve others, to even see others. So it's the wrong goal, and it truly and clearly leads to destruction, as we are seeing, evidence today in our young adults who have grown up in this culture of self-esteem.
Well, we're talking with Jill Rigby on the program Today's Issues here on American Family Radio, and we're discussing her book, Raising Respectful Children in a Disrespectful World. Jill, inside the book, you have a study guide for small group studies. You are really trying to equip folks to do a better job of perhaps raising respect in the child for them to respect themselves more so than just build in the false self-esteem. The false self-esteem. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The analogy, the great analogy that I use that I think shows it so clearly is this idea of the mirror or the window. When children are born today, they're crowned, right, as king or queen today. Mm-hmm. They used to be crowned prince and princess, which kept the authority line in order. Now we're crowning them king or queen because we're going to work on their self-esteem. And then we put a mirror in their hands and say, honey, take a look because it's going to be all about you. And we call that the mirror of self-esteem. And what happens when you look in a mirror? You only see one person, right? You only see yourself. Right. You can't see through a mirror. You can't see others through the mirror. Neither can you see others looking at you. There's the explanation of the social media explosion. Look at me, look at me. Why can't someone see me? That kids are living in today. And let's push it all the way out. If you're living in the mirror of self-esteem, you can't see God, and neither can you see God looking at you. There's the explanation for the hopelessness in our young people today. So what if instead we get rid of that mirror, put it down, smash it, and instead raise children at the window? You know, when you look out a window, you see your own reflection in the glass, right? You can see it, but
Yes.
It's a dim reflection. There's your balance. When you're looking through yourself at the window, you see beyond yourself. You can see the world ahead of you. You can see the possibilities of what life can be. You can see the needs of others. So at the window, life becomes all about raising children at the window, and we call that the window of self-respect, because now they're looking out, they're not looking in. And the more you look out, the more you serve, the more you build respect for yourself. And life becomes all about how am I going to serve the world, rather than in the mirror, the only thing life is about is how is the world going to serve me.
Jill Rigby is our guest. Her website is
mannersoftheheart.org.
Mannersoftheheart.org. Mannersoftheheart.org. Jill joins us from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we're talking about raising respectful children in a disrespectful world. Let's take something as simple as addressing adults today. Is that changed, Jill? In other words, are children still talking? Well, obviously we're talking generally speaking here, the general public. Are they still taught respect for their elders, or do they even have respect for their elders anymore?
You know, even something as simple as that, which we want to feel is such a little thing, has changed so drastically. And you know, if we let enough little things go by the wayside, which is what has happened to us, we decided all that little stuff didn't matter so much anymore. And if we let enough little things go, we end up with a giant mess, which is what's happened to us. Something that simple. I'll take it all the way back to the beginning. Say a 2-year-old. 2 in the South, of course, there are still parents who are teaching that child to say yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am.
Right.
I lived in New York City. I have identical twin sons who are grown men now. But when those boys were 4, we moved to New York City, and we lived in the middle of Manhattan for 2 years, just at the time they were beginning to absorb that importance of saying yes, sir, and no, sir. And they were told in New York not to say it, that people found offense in that, of someone saying yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. They just want it to be buddies. You know, they just wanted the kids to call them by their first name and, you know, and let all that formality, they called it, go. But here's the problem with that. When we don't instill those little things and those little moments of respect, saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, teaching children to do that is the first opportunity we have to instill respect in a child for authority, for adults. It's a way of letting children know there really is a difference between an adult and a child, that it's the first opportunity to begin to instill that whole other-centeredness of getting a child to look outside themselves, to show respect for someone else. And when we don't do that, which is what we've let go of too much in our society, little by little, the respect erodes. And if children are not taught to respect others, they cannot begin to form respect for themselves. And there you get in that cycle, the chicken or the egg, which comes first. You get in that cycle, and all it does is erode the respect for anything, anyone or anything in our society.
You know, it's funny because I remember back, of course, I was raised like you just described as, you know, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, as most of our listening audience was probably raised in that fashion, you know, respect your elders. And I remember my father-in-law, who passed away 5 years, we were real good friends, but back when I started, dating Allison, and then we got married, it was I remember when I referred to him always as Mr. Harden.
Mm-hmm.
That was his last name. I didn't refer to him as his first name, because I wasn't on a peer level. He was my father-in-law. But I remember when he and my mother-in-law told me, you can call us Jim and Brenda now.
Right.
Because you're an adult man, and, we're talking to me. And so we're on an equal level in that sense, that we're both adults here. But I just, that's funny. You should talk about yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no sir, and the formalities that we have. That's
when
do you remember?
Oh, I do. Absolutely.
Same thing for you with your.
Well, I was going to say I married later in life. I was
Right.
about 30 when we